Remco Evenepoel is going to the Tour de France 2025 with this team. And to be honest with you, I'm not even convinced that he's a lock for the podium at this point. So I'm going to break this one down. We're going to have a look at the team that he's announced today, have a look at his form, the other possible podium contenders, and why this one might be a lot tougher than fans are expecting. So let's jump into this one and have a look at who we've got first up. So first up, we've got Ilan van Wilder, probably Remco's #1 climbing domestique on this team, I suspect. He was there last year, really solid climber, probably going to be the last guy in the train with Remco on the climbs. I think in the absence of Landa, he is probably the best option for Remco in terms of a climbing domestique. Obviously, he would have liked Landa to be there, but Landa crashed out really badly in stage 1 of the Giro, and I think he's still recovering. So he's certainly going to be a big miss for Remco in the mountains and on the climbs. But Wilder is a solid option and certainly someone we expected to be there. So who have we got up next? Okay, Valentin Parepantra, or as Sean Kelly likes to call him, Parry Painter. The lightweight climbing option, only 52 kilos at 178 centimeters. I didn't realize he was quite that tall. That's tall for a guy that light. And also a rider that is 15 years younger than me, but somehow looks the same age. I think he's probably the direct replacement for Landa, right? Like he's probably the guy that maybe wasn't necessarily expected to get the call for this. But in lieu of Landa, he's probably the next sort of best option they've got, really, climbing. I mean, it's, with all due respect to Parepantra, it's quite a downgrade from Landa, but, you know, who else would you bring? So not totally unexpected there. And again, a good option for Remco in the mountains. He's not going to be there at the end. You know, he's not going to be one of those sorts of guys that's able to keep the pace when UAE and Visma start really drilling it on the climbs. But at least he's something, right? He's somebody to help Remco, help positioning him, help protect him from the draft a little bit. And then next up, we've got Max Schachmann. So he's back at Quick-Step this year, isn't he? After a few years away at Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe. So again, he's somebody that can kind of do quite a good job on the climbs. He's sort of a roulery kind of guy, isn't he? So he's capable on the flat, on the hills, and on the climbs. I was about to say his best days are behind him, but that date of birth can't be right, is it? He's not 41. There's no way he's 41. Is he? Am I losing my mind? He's not 41, is he? Well, I'm going to have to check this out on Pro Cycling Stats. He's been around a while, but he's not been around that long, right? Right, okay, here he is. No, look, he's 31. 1994, not 1984. You know it's bad when Quick-Step don't even know how old their own team are. But again, he's a guy, you know, he's not going to be there at the end with the high mountains, right? But he's going to be able to provide some sort of some support and some protection for Remco. So we're not surprised to see him there, I don't think. Okay, next up we've got Pascal Encorn. Not unexpected. Maybe the one that was slightly more, you know, could have been in there, could have not been in there, but it's not a surprise. He's gonna be a sort of just a protector role, isn't he? So probably on the flat for Remco. Sort of again another kind of a one-day classicsy sort of guy, right? So he's certainly not going to be there on the climbs, but hopefully he can sort of protect Remco a little bit on the flat, get him into position for the base of the climbs. You know, it looks a little bit weak on the climbing front, right? So far, that's definitely my first reaction. The question is, who have Quick-Step got for climbing support, right? That they could bring in the absence of Landa. Okay, next up, Matteo Cattaneo. Again, nothing unexpected there. Pretty much, you know, probably a fairly certain pick. But again, you know, he's got good support, good experience, but he's not got the level of climbing that's going to be needed, right? Surely, it's the climbing pedigree for this team looks to be lacking a little bit to me. And it's great to have Remco protected by guys that are going to be able to look after him on the flat. But, you know, of all the areas that Remco doesn't really need looking after, he's super strong on the flat already, right? And he can... Yeah, he's had a few issues, I think, with positioning himself at the bottom of climbs recently, but maybe that's more around not having the legs, right? Than he knows where he needs to be for the most part. You know, we saw on stage 1 of the Dauphiné, he bridged across to Pog and Vin when they were off the front, and he did it solo when the peloton was chasing and couldn't catch themselves. He managed to bridge across on his own. So he's super flat, super strong on the flat and places like that. So I'm not convinced that he needs that sort of support, you know. it's great to have people there for crosswinds and splits, and if he manages to get into the yellow jersey to try and control stuff, but it's just not enough. It's not going to be enough. If you look at the sort of quality of the climbers in this team and UAE and Visma, it's night and day, isn't it? It's night and day. You can't even compare them, really. And that's no shade on, Quick Step. Obviously, we know that UAE and Visma have got the strongest climbing squad, so they're going to bring the best climbers. But, it's just, when you compare them, it's almost scary, right? If you look at this team and try to think, it's not even a bad team in terms of like the level of domestique and climber here, right? It's just not even close to Visma and UAE. But, even compared to some of the other GC teams, like the level of climbing here is not as good as, say, Ineos, right? Ineos have got some really good climbing support. They just don't have a GC guy that's going to be able to pay it off, right? You've got Carlos Rodriguez, who I'll tell you right now, will not podium the Tour de France. But they've brought the level of climber that will help him do it. It's just a shame it's wasted on him. It's almost like Ineos built the team ready for Remco to come in, right? They built the team that Remco would have wanted to help support him, but they just didn't manage to actually get Remco to join. So maybe they're trying to tempt him, and they're saying, hey, look, next year, if you actually want to make a go for something, if you want to have a strong team that can apply pressure on the climbs, then come to us and we'll build a team around you, and you'll have all the climbers that your heart desires. But at the minute, they've got a stronger climbing squad than Quick Step, and they don't even really have a proper GC guy, in my opinion. So if we look at the Bora team, for example, let's look at the Bora team. Like, even their levels of climbers better, right? Roglic, Lipowitz, Vlasov, they've probably got a better climbing team as well. So it's tough. I know it's not a bad team, but it's certainly not the best team, or even probably in the top 5 teams in terms of climbers. So it's tough for Remco as a podium candidate. But yeah, let's see who else we've got. There's a couple more left on this squad. Next up, we've got European champion, arguably the world's best sprinter right now, Tim Merlier. Fantastic stage winner, and certainly a candidate to win the yellow jersey on stage 1 in the bunch sprint. But, it's interesting, isn't it, that he's even here? If you look at it and say, are UAE or Visma bringing sprinters to the Tour? No, of course they're not. They're totally set up, 100% set up on how they can support their number 1 guy going for the yellow jersey, right? But it doesn't look like that's the case here to me, and it's entirely possible, right, that if you look at, if they're looking at it objectively, they're going to say, can Remco win the Tour? Technically, sure, he can, but he's going to need obviously quite a lot to go wrong for both Vin and Pog. There's got to be a lot of different sort of unlikely scenarios play out for Remco to win it. So maybe considering, the kind of level difference from the Dauphiné, they're thinking, our best bet here is to go for maybe a podium with Remco, try and get a stage win on the TT and maybe the yellow jersey, but also look at stage wins with Merlier, right? And go for sprints, because certainly he's just as good as some of the other sprinters being here, right? And he may not have a full team, he's not going to have a full lead out like Philipsen is, but he's certainly still capable of competing with Philipsen. But looking at it, before we get any further, he has got 1 lead out man with him. So the last member of this Quick Step team is going to be Bert van Lerberger. So he is the lead out man for Merlier. They've given him 1 guy. They've given him one domestique, 1 lead out man to protect him, guide him, get him to the finish. So for sure, he's probably going to do a bit of wheel surfing and stuff like that. But it's just interesting that he's here in the first place, right? And they've not gone all in for Remco. It tells you probably where their objectives lie. They're probably not thinking about yellow for Remco. They're probably thinking podium's the best sort of bet they can get with him. What happens if Remco takes yellow in the TT on stage 5? Are this team going to be able to defend the yellow jersey the whole way? So say Pog crashes out in the sprint in stage 1 and Remco takes a minute on Vingegaard in that TT. Is this team going to be able to control the breakaways, pace the climbs, keep him out of trouble on the splits, the crashes, that sort of stuff for 3 weeks? Probably not. No, probably not. When you compare it to what Pog has around him on the climbs and on the flat, it's just, they just don't have the firepower. They just don't have it. So that's the team itself. So I think his team's definitely put him at a little bit of a disadvantage to start with, just against the top guys. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, as it always does, who's got the legs, who's got the form over 3 weeks. And if he's on top form and he's doing well, I think he's still going to perform well, and I think he's still going to be a really strong candidate for the podium. He wasn't quite in top form at the Dauphiné, but were we expecting him to be? I don't think so. Looking at it, I think looking at how he did last year in the Dauphiné, I think he got 7th last year, right? Even worse than this year. And by the time the Tour rolled around 3 weeks later, he was in top form and he looked great. And really, towards the end, he was even pushing Vin for second, right? He was trying to fight Vin for second spot. So I wouldn't be too worried about his performance at the Dauphiné. But that being said, he's still a way off the top guys, right? And he still didn't get third. He was still beaten by Lipowitz, who's arguably not even the GC leader for Red Bull. And there was clearly some frustration from him. I can't remember what he said, but he said he needed to go away and do more work to get to their level, right? He was annoyed at himself after some of those climbing stages, which tells you even if he wasn't expected to be on top form, I don't think necessarily he thought the gap to Pog and Vin was going to be as big as it is or was over the course of these 3 weeks. He didn't have a great Giro in 2023, was it, against Roglic as well, the one that Roglic won that he sort of pulled out. So he can definitely have these bad moments. And against some of these other world-class climbers with great teams, it's really difficult. If we have a look and we analyse some of the other contenders for the podium, he's the third favourite to win the Tour and therefore the favourite to be on the podium. But if we break it down and look at it, I don't think that it's anywhere near as much of a favourite as the bookies suggest. And I think there's arguably other better favourites right now than him. Then I think we know that Vingegaard and Pogačar, say no more. We don't even need to talk about why they are favourites to finish ahead of Remco. So I think at this point, we all understand that realistically he's fighting for third, right? The most likely scenario here is that he's fighting for that third spot on the podium. So who are his main rivals for that spot? If we have a look at Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe again, so looking at the Red Bull team, it's pretty stacked, in terms of podium contenders. They've got Roglic, who's obviously, we all know Roglic's history with the Tour. I don't actually think he's finished the Tour since 2020, right? Was that even the last? That was the last time he finished it successfully, right? So he's certainly got a point to prove. He's come here as the GC leader. He crashed out at the Giro, not looking particularly great. And I think he's like 5th or 6th favourite with the odds makers, which just tells you how stacked this field is. For sure, he's past his best. He's 35, ancient for a GC guy. But that being said, he's still great on his day, and he's still certainly capable of a podium over 3 weeks if everything goes right and he avoids falling over. The amount of Grand Tours that guy's won speaks for itself, right? You certainly can't write him off until he's already crashed out. And even then, Roglic is arguably not even the GC leader on his own team. If you look at Lipowitz, Lipowitz got 3rd at the Dauphiné. He literally beat Remco off the podium 3 weeks ago in a stage race. So he's certainly a contender to be able to do it again at the Tour, right? Now, I think he's probably going to be sort of given the freedom to ride for himself. I don't think he's necessarily going to be team leader for Red Bull until either Roglic loses time or crashes out. But I think they're going to keep him there and maybe use him as a dual attack option, right? So they've got 2 GC guys that Remco needs to worry about that might be attacking him. So just those 2 guys alone from Red Bull have a really good crack at taking Remco off the podium if he's not careful. He certainly can't afford to take his eyes off them or let them go up the road in any breaks or anything like that. He's going to have to follow them. Whilst I'm looking, it looks like they've got a Tour de France special edition kit, Red Bull. So let's have a quick look at it. That looks okay, actually. I quite like that one. It's better than the Visma one and the UAE one, I'll give it that. You've got the lower ranked guys, right? The outsiders for the podium, but the guys that you don't want to let get in a breakaway 10 minutes up the road on stage 4 because you're going to regret it later on. So your Ben O'Connors of this world, Enric Mas, people like that. Amstel Gold winner, Matthias Skelmos, he's certainly going to be looking for a top 10, top 5 probably at the Tour. Again, if you're Remco, you can't sort of let him go up the road either. I mentioned it earlier on, but Carlos Rodriguez, no way, no chance. Not in this or any other parallel lifetimes will Carlos Rodriguez podium the Tour. And then really, you've got arguably the biggest threats to him are some of the secondary guys from the top 2 teams, right? So for Visma, you've got Simon Yates. He literally just won the Giro. He could be a really good option for them to try and get in a breakaway, try and send up the road on a climb and hope that the other guys look at him or chase him and have to burn some matches. But certainly, again, not a guy that you can just sort of let go away on the climbs or in a breakaway. So Remco's going to have to think about him. Sepp Kuss as well, former Grand Tour winner. Yeah, sure, not at the right level for the last couple of years to be thinking about a Grand Tour win and proves pretty much in his own words doesn't want to be a GC guy. But again, you can't just let him get up the road in a breakaway on stage 1 and just get 10, 15 minutes. These are people that Remco's going to have to think about. And at the end of the day, it's going to take time, energy, teammates and effort to look after these situations. So over 3 weeks, it's going to add up. But really, I've left probably his biggest threat till last. I think really, arguably the third best GC rider in the world at the minute. You could certainly make an argument that he's the third best climber in the world at the minute. Fourth at last year's Tour, and maybe hoping to take one step up further this year. Tadej Pogacar's #1 domestique, João Almeida. He's just got off the back of winning the Tour de Suisse, where he looked great. He got a stage win, managed to claw back loads of time that they gave away to the breakaway in stage 1 that initially looked like a foolish move. He is a top quality rider, and I think Remco's really going to have to think about him, right? He's going to be a serious threat to the podium. He's going to work for Pog. That's going to be his role. He's there to work for Pog. But when that job is done, he'll be the last guy for Pog and pacing it on the climbs of well. When that job is done and Pog launches it on the back of that pacing, we saw it last year. Almeida will be allowed to ride for his own GC. And he does a great job of it. He's great at pacing himself, right? He's quite similar to Remco in that sense in terms of climbing. He won't often follow the accelerations and the attacks from the other riders, or if he does, he might blow up. But he's really good at pacing himself and going at his pace and TTing his way up the climbs, and eventually usually manages to sort of reconnect. So I think he's going to be super dangerous, and he's just such a solid rider at the minute. He's so consistent. I've seen others say it as well, but I agree. I think he's got to be really the favourite for third spot on the podium at the minute, despite what the odds makers say. So if all of those guys finish this race, Remco might be fighting for fourth. That's not hate, that's just reality. He's certainly got the heart, but has he got the team, the experience and the form to tie it all together? Time will tell. There's only a few more days until we'll find out. So where do you think Remco finishes? Am I underrating him, or am I just being realistic? I'll be dropping a full outrageous Tour de France predictions video on Thursday or Friday before the start, so make sure you catch that one. Make sure you like, comment and subscribe. Catch you on the next one.